They never saw the damage they caused, because they were never the ones left standing in the ruins. You were. You stood there, heart bleeding behind a composed face, watching everything you trusted turn to ash. Betrayal doesn't always come with war drums. Sometimes it comes with silence and a familiar voice, but let them go. Let the ones who turned away vanish into the shadows they chose, because this story, it isn't about them. It's about what rises from the wreckage. It's about you, the soul who was shattered, and still chose to heal, not for revenge, not for applause, but for peace, for freedom, for something greater. You were betrayed, but now you're about to be blessed. The quiet knife of betrayal is not loud. It doesn't crash through the door or announce itself with fury. No, betrayal wears a mask. It smiles at you over dinner, texts you good morning, claps when you succeed, all while holding the knife behind its back, and when it strikes, it doesn't hit your pride. It aims for your trust. The betrayal that breaks us is rarely from strangers. It's the kind that comes from the ones we held close. The friend you defended in rooms where they mocked you. The partner you poured your heart into, only to find their loyalty was rented. The family member who used your silence as permission to wound you over and over again. These are not mere disappointments. These are the quiet knives, small, precise, and devastatingly deep. And the worst part, it's not the act, it's the realization that you misjudged, that the laughter you shared was one-sided, that your loyalty became your liability. You sit in the echo of what was, asking questions no one will answer. Was any of it real? How long was I being lied to? Why didn't I see it coming? And the shame begins to creep in, because betrayal always comes with self-blame. But hear this, being loyal is not a weakness. Trusting someone was not your mistake. Their deceit is not your burden to carry. You were genuine, you were present, you showed up with your full heart, and that is nothing to be ashamed of. The pain that betrayal brings is not just emotional, it's psychological. It rewires how you see people, how you enter rooms, how you speak, trust, and love. It builds walls you didn't want to build. Suddenly, even kindness feels suspicious. Even compliments feel rehearsed. And yet, within that very pain, something begins to awaken, a clarity, a sobering awareness that while they may have fooled you once, they'll never get the chance again. That doesn't make you bitter. It makes you wise. Hardened, perhaps, but not cruel. You start to understand that not everyone around you claps for your healing. That sometimes the betrayal happened not because you were too weak, but because your light made them uncomfortable. Still, the knife hurts, and sometimes the scars itch at night when the world is quiet and the memories get loud. But do not run from those scars. Wear them, not as wounds but as reminders, not of the pain but of the lesson. Because every betrayal you survived refined you. It stripped away illusion. It filtered your circle. It taught you how to see, not just people, but yourself. And what you now see is power, still gentle, still kind but awake. So yes, they betrayed you, but you lived. You didn't just survive. You stayed soft in a world that tried to harden you. That is strength. That is rare, and that is the beginning of the blessing. The stillness after the storm, there is a strange silence that follows betrayal. Not the peaceful kind, but the hollow, echoing quiet that fills a room after trust has been shattered. No more arguments, no more pretending, no more trying to fix what someone else was determined to break. Just silence, and in that silence something begins to settle. Not answers, not closure, but a stillness. At first, it feels like suffocation. Like the world has gone dim and heavy. You keep expecting someone to reach out, to say it was all a mistake, to fix what they destroyed. But no one comes, and that silence, it begins to speak louder than any apology ever could. It tells you who they really were. It shows you what you meant to them, and most painfully, it reveals the truth that your loyalty was one-sided and your presence was taken for granted. That is the storm's aftermath. No thunder, no lightning, just the ruins, And yet, in those ruins, something sacred begins. The beginning of clarity, because while betrayal brings chaos, the stillness that follows is the first time you've had a chance to truly listen, not to them, but to yourself. To hear your own breathing, to feel your own pain without having to mask it, to sit with your own questions even when they burn. You may not realize it in that moment, but that stillness is where healing starts. Not in the noise of distraction, not in the fake apologies or the false promises of change. Healing begins in silence, in the brutal, beautiful quiet that forces you to look inward. You start to notice things. How you were always the one reaching out. How you made excuses for their absences, their coldness, their neglect. You see your patterns. How you overgave, how you ignored the red flags, how you kept choosing them over yourself. And though it hurts, that realization is power, because now you are no longer blind. You are no longer waiting for someone to do right by you. You are learning how to do right by yourself, and that is a sacred shift. The stillness that once felt unbearable becomes the soil in which something new is planted. Discernment, boundaries, and an unshakable sense of self. And yes, there will be moments when the silence still stings, when memories sneak in through the cracks, when you wonder if they ever truly cared. But over time you begin to appreciate the quiet. You begin to cherish your own space. The peace that once felt lonely becomes your protection. You stop seeking noise to fill the void, because now the void is not empty. It is full of you, your growth, your strength, your truth, and no one can take that from you. So let the silence stay a little longer. Let it teach you. Let it soften the noise of betrayal and make room for something higher. Because when you learn to breathe in the stillness, you're no longer at the mercy of the storm. You've become the calm after it. The strength found in isolation at first. Isolation feels like punishment. One day you're surrounded by laughter, by conversations, by people who made you feel seen, and the next you're alone, not by choice, but by force. Left behind, abandoned, betrayed, it's a silence unlike any other, a kind that doesn't just echo in your ears, but in your bones. You sit in empty rooms and wonder what changed. You scroll through your mind looking for the moment you became forgettable. You question your worth, your memory, your reality. But here's what no one tells you in the early hours of isolation. This loneliness you're feeling, it's not weakness, it's not failure. It is the cocoon before the transformation. And the very people who left you behind unknowingly handed you the greatest gift. They gave you back to yourself. Because when the noise fades, when the distractions leave, when all the false connections fall away, what remains is something pure, your core. Your raw, unfiltered self. No performances, no pretending, just you. And it's in this solitude that your eyes begin to adjust. You start seeing not just the world more clearly, but your own patterns, the things you tolerated to avoid being alone, the boundaries you never set, the parts of yourself you shrunk just to keep others comfortable. Isolation becomes the mirror, and for the first time you're not looking at what others did to you, but what you've allowed, what you've accepted, and what you're ready to outgrow. The silence, once unbearable, becomes sacred. You stop craving noise and start craving depth. You begin to choose yourself, not as a reaction, not as revenge, but as a commitment. You drink water, you get rest, you read, you walk, you breathe without asking permission, and slowly you realize something: life, changing. You are enough, without validation, without company, without applause. You are enough alone. That kind of self-discovery doesn't happen in crowds. It happens in the quiet. It happens in the absence. It happens in isolation. And no, this doesn't mean you stop needing people. It means you stop needing the wrong ones. You stop begging for space in rooms where you were only ever tolerated. You stop trying to fix what you didn't break. You let people go. not with bitterness, but with grace, because now your peace costs too much to be disturbed. And the beauty of isolation is that it teaches you the difference between solitude and loneliness. Solitude heals, loneliness wounds, but what you're learning now is solitude, strength, wholeness. So the next time you feel alone, remember this: the quiet is not your enemy, it is your sanctuary. It is where your power sharpens, where your intuition gets louder, where your spirit finds its voice. You were placed in this space, not to suffer, but to evolve. They may have walked away, but you walked inward, and what you're building now, this grounded, self-aware, powerful version of you, it's unshakable. That is the strength found in isolation, the art of silent rising. Not every comeback needs a crowd. Not every healing needs a headline. Sometimes the most powerful rise is the one no one sees coming, the kind built in silence, far from the spotlight, in the unseen hours when you choose not to collapse. After betrayal, after heartbreak, after loss, there's a moment when you realize you don't need to prove anything anymore. Not to them, not to the world, not even to yourself. You've already survived what tried to break you, and that survival, that's your proof, that's your evidence. The art of silent rising begins right there, and that quiet decision to move forward without fanfare, without announcements, without revenge in your heart. Just movement, just purpose, just peace. The world teaches you to shout your strength, to make sure everyone hears your story of victory. But true strength doesn't need noise. It has nothing to prove. It knows its own weight. It walks into rooms with presence, not performance. And when you rise silently, something incredible happens. You become untouchable. Not because you've built walls, but because you've outgrown the need for validation. The people who betrayed you, they were watching for a reaction. They expected the breakdown, the bitterness, the angry outburst. But instead you gave them nothing but your absence, your silence, your detachment, and that silence, that was the loudest thing you could have ever done. Rising silently doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt. It means you no longer carry the weight of needing closure, justice, or revenge to move on. You begin to understand that closure is an inside job, that healing doesn't depend on an apology that may never come. That peace comes when you stop needing people to understand your pain, because you understand it, and that's enough. The silent rise is personal. It's sacred. It happens in the still moments when you decide to live well, not as payback, but as liberation. And make no mistake, silent rising is not weakness. It is restraint. It is mastery over your emotions. It is choosing your dignity over temporary satisfaction. The real victory is not being seen winning. It's knowing you've won and not needing to be seen. You no longer want to prove them wrong. You just want to be right with yourself. You start to build, quietly, steadily, consistently. You invest in your body, your mind, your soul. You take the lessons, the pain, the rejection, and you use them as bricks, not chains. You rise with grace, with clarity, with purpose. So let them wonder. Let them scroll through your silence looking for cracks. Let them speak your name in rooms you no longer enter. You owe them nothing. Not a response, not a reaction, not your energy. Your growth is not for their consumption. It's for your transformation. That is the art of silent rising. And when you walk through your next season, you won't need applause. You'll have something better, peace, and that is louder than any roar. The blessing of becoming untouchable. There comes a moment, quiet, unannounced, when you realize that you are no longer fragile. The things that used to shatter you now pass through you like wind through stone. Not because you stopped feeling, but because you started healing. The betrayal, the abandonment, the disrespect. They once pierced like arrows, but now they don't even reach your skin. Why? Because you've become untouchable. Not in arrogance, not in coldness, but in strength. A strength that was earned in the dark, forged in silence, polished by solitude. This is the blessing no one talks about. The blessing of becoming someone who no longer breaks at the same places. You didn't just survive betrayal. You alchemized it. You took pain and turned it into wisdom. You took loss and turned it into vision. And in that transformation, something shifted permanently. Your sense of self is no longer tied to how others treat you. You've learned to validate your own voice, to calm your own storms, to walk away not as a victim, but as a sovereign soul who knows their worth. People can sense it. The ones who once manipulated you now hesitate. Not because you've become aggressive, but because your peace radiates a boundary they can't cross. Your silence speaks louder than confrontation ever could. You're no longer reactive, you're intentional. And that composure, that quiet certainty, it's intimidating to those who once thrived off your chaos. Becoming untouchable doesn't mean you've stopped loving. On the contrary, you love deeper now, just not blindly. You still care, but wisely. You give, but selectively. You help, but without losing yourself in the process. That balance, that inner alignment, is a blessing disguised as resilience. It's what happens when you finally understand that your energy is sacred, that not everyone deserves access, that peace is your new standard, and anything that threatens it, no matter how familiar, must go. And here's the deeper truth. The people who betrayed you didn't expect you to rise like this. They thought they'd broken something permanent. They never imagined you'd become better, calmer, wiser. That's the beautiful irony of betrayal. It always underestimates the soul it tries to destroy. But you were built for more, and the more they tried to diminish you, the deeper your roots grew. Now you are no longer seeking justice. You've become it. You're no longer waiting to be chosen. You've already chosen yourself. This is the blessing, not the material gain, not the external praise, but the unshakable inner knowing that no matter what life throws at you, you will rise again and again, not with noise, not with vengeance, but with quiet, graceful power. You're untouchable now, not because you feel nothing, but because you've learned what deserves your response and what deserves your silence. Let them wonder how you got here. Let them feel the weight of your absence. Let them face the reflection of who they chose to lose. You've already moved on from betrayed to blessed